Well, hi there. I really honestly have been thinking lately, and I kind of just want to try something new. This is kind of an experimental thing. So if you're here, thank you so much for popping in. I have been doing some they might not seem well polished, but I feel like they're pretty well polished bits of history and content. And I love doing that, and I will continue doing that. But I was kind of thinking that I might just move into doing more laid back, and I kind of just want to get into like the meat of stuff really, really quickly and just get it out there, and we'll see how it goes. So if you will just join me for a casual talk on the couch, we're going to talk about Daniel Boone. And I know that that sounds super random, but I really want these to be kind of biographies of people, people through history, even current people. But as I was reading, I was noticing some things about Daniel Boone that I found really interesting, and I kind of just want to give you a brief telling of his story and who he was. I don't know if you know who he was or if you've heard of him before or if he's completely new to you, but let's just go through a few things and then I'll kind of tell you what I was thinking as I was learning about him, if that even matters to you, and we'll just get into it without like anything else. Let's just talk about Daniel Boone. Okay, cool. So, Daniel Boone. My thinking is that maybe if you've heard of him, you might kind of just know about him, but you don't really know about him. At least that's how it was for me. Like, I'd always heard of him and I always pictured like some guy wearing like a coonskin cap, and that's all good and well, but I didn't really know much about him. So then I just randomly started reading about him. I wanted to get some good biographies together, and I actually thought, whoa, this guy is pretty cool, because I'm sure, as you know, there are a lot of men in the world who they're going after that American dream. And Daniel Boone was not that guy. He was very early America, born in 1734 in Pennsylvania in a very small log cabin. But Daniel Boone, he was a restless guy. He was right in the center of the Pennsylvania frontier, and the world around him was still very new. It was still very raw. Obviously, America wasn't even technically a thing just yet. It was in the works, so we should say, 1734. We had a lot to do. There was a lot that was going to happen. However, growing up, most of the boys in his little community were taught how to farm, which is awesome. We need our farmers for sure. But Boone, he learned very early more so how to disappear. He was a restless young thing. He liked being out in the woods. He probably wasn't wearing shoes all that often. He was just bebopping along, picking up, what's the saying? Frogs and snails and puppy dog tails. That was him. He was just out putting his hands on anything that he could find in the woods and picking up sticks and throwing rocks, and nobody knew where he was at. They were like, where is that little Daniel? He was just out. Nobody knew. He was just bopping along, which is super precious to me. How cute. But I will tell you that by the time he was 12 years old, he carried a rifle everywhere he went, and this was not necessarily just for show or really anything other than necessity. It was like a pair of shoes or a piece of rope or something like that. It was a tool to him, which, again, awesome. I mean, he's out there kind of in the wilderness doing his thing. He also was really good, and I'm talking really good, at tracking animals. I mean, he could pick up a trail and he could follow it. He could move through the woods very, very quietly. I mean, he was kind of like a little mini survivalist, and he was just out playing. He just really enjoyed this. And more than anything, this young man hated sitting still. He never wanted to be still. You could not get him to sit down, chill out, play your Game Boy. It wasn't going to happen. Now, as a very young man, Boone got his first taste of like danger, adventure, excitement during the French and Indian War. Now, he was not at all a polished soldier. He had zero interest in drills or marching in a straight line or anything like that, but he was very, very familiar with the wilderness around him. He understood basically anything that was off the beaten path. Other men could follow the roads fine and well, but he was like, I can take us through the woods and I know exactly where I'm at. So he ended up getting into a little ambush situation with a General Braddock. And this is something that really stuck with him. It ended up being kind of a very scary standoff. It was actually a good lesson for him. He never ended up forgetting that. It was very impactful. It was pivotal. But obviously, he came out okay, and time continued to march on. And as time was marching on, he did end up getting married. And he married a woman named Rebecca Bryant in 1756. And these two were having some fun because together they ended up having not one, not two, not five, but 10 children. And I'm saying that correctly. Yes, 10 children. I mean, I understand that it's the land of no birth control. But my God, 10 children. So good for them. Fertile land, fertile people. Well, I guess they didn't really have preservatives in their food back then. And no nonstick pans and whatever else is keeping us from getting pregnant these days. Anyway, that's a discussion for a different time and a different channel, I think. But I digress. Even though Mr. Boone and Mrs. Boone really liked to have children, Daniel was still super restless. He still did not like to just sit at home. And I guess I understand that. He probably was looking for an excuse to run to the store with the chaotic house that he had built for himself. He always had his eyes on the horizon. He always wanted to go elsewhere and do more and experience more and go on an adventure. And that's what he did. So, in 1769, he actually went on such an adventure. He crossed the mountains through the Cumberland Gap, which I always think of that Darius Rucker song when I hear anything referencing the Cumberland Gap. But he did pass through that region, that particular area, and he actually ended up in a place that very few settlers, if any really, had ever seen. And that place was Kentucky. Yes, Kentucky. This was before Kentucky was Kentucky. This was just like a couple people had passed through this untamed wilderness. And to Boone, this was a huge discovery. He was really excited. He actually felt like it was recognition. Like when he saw it, he was like, I'm home. This is for me. It just was a beautiful countryside full of rolling hills and deep forests and tons of wildlife and rivers. And he was just breathtaking by it. And honestly, can you blame him? I mean, really, can you blame the man? This particular plot of land, good old Kentucky, was everything that he had really been searching for. And he was like, I'm home. I'm doing this. I want this to be a thing. And so he decides that he's going to just make himself comfortable. Unfortunately, though, or maybe fortunately, I don't know, he was not out there entirely alone. He actually was standing on land that belonged to a lot of indigenous tribes. And these particular tribesmen and women, they were occupying the land, they were hunting on the land, they were dancing, they were doing life, they were, what am I trying to say? There's a word that I'm trying to say. They were worshiping. They were just doing what they did and what they'd always done for generations and generations and generations. And they defended the land, and they defended it far better than anyone, even Daniel Boone, ever could. So at one point, while Boone's out there just bopping through the woods, picking up the field mice and bopping them on the head, he actually gets caught by a group of Shawnee warriors. Now, the warriors, they were kind of just wanting to send a message. They did not do anything too crazy. They did take all of his supplies. They took his furs. They took basically everything that he had, but they didn't hurt him, and they just left him with a warning. They literally were just like, this land is not yours. Now, I would think, if that happened to me, I would probably be like, yeah, you're right. I will go back elsewhere. But not Boone. He actually returned. Anyway, he was like, I really don't care. I really like this land. I would really like to have a piece of it. Now, judge that as you may. I understand how that comes across. I wasn't exactly obsessed with that either, but I'm going to tell you this. In 1775, things are heating up for America around this time, but Boone, he actually helped path this little trail through the wilderness. Now, he ends up finding this very narrow road that would become this gateway for thousands upon thousands of settlers, people traveling, explorers, surveyors, etc. And he finds this, it's very much like the Chisholm Trail, which came much later. And we're definitely going to talk about the Chisholm Trail, because if you don't know about the Chisholm Trail, I don't know what it is. Probably because it cuts through Oklahoma, and I always will love Oklahoma. But God, the Chisholm Trail. Oh, woo! I can't wait to talk about that. But right now, I'm just comparing it to the Chisholm Trail. It was just one of those things that like Boone found, and then everybody was like, oh my gosh, this is the most direct route. Let's take it. And so tons of people ended up passing through there. However, I will tell you, at the end of this narrow little cutout road, Boone actually threw up his own little settlement, and he kind of put together his own little town, and it was called Boonesborough. I love it. I love it. I'm just telling you that if I was cutting out paths and I was doing that, I would definitely, without a doubt, name mine Brackenville. But that's neither here nor there. Because really, Brackenville sounds like a really nice place to live. Boonesborough was not. I mean, I'm sure it was nice as far as places went during this time, but this was actually a little settlement that was carved out of forest and fear. This was a place that had to be defended. This was not necessarily some little house on the prairie, settle down and turn some butter and, oh, Alfonso. This was full on survival. I mean, this was like for real, kind of dangerous. Stakes are high out here. The cabins that went up were constantly surrounded by different threats. There were very scary things happening, like very scary other people, of course, but there were many predators. You always have to factor in the weather. I mean, my gosh, nothing was really that easy back then. I want to point this out briefly, but human life, like all of human life, has really not been that kind. We live in like the best time for humans to ever be alive. I really feel that way. It's never been easy out here. I'm telling you, if you think you have it hard, you have it better than 99% of all humans who have ever lived. And if you don't see that, you're a fool. Like, really, you're a fool. I understand, like, horrible things still happen, and I acknowledge that, but worse things have been happening for forever, like forever and ever. I stand by that. I really do. Like, obviously, there are awful, heinous things that are going on right now in the world, always. It was way worse back then. Like, way worse for all humans. Anyway, not the point of the video. I will try to stay on task. Boonesborough. Danger, fear, everywhere. Now, you would think that this would be a great time for Mr. Daniel Boone to just sit down, chill out, you found your home. This is where you wanted to be. You're here now. And to an extent, that was true. He was very much invested in his little state place, his home, this new place. Obviously, you would think that his town named after him, his settlement where all these people were, you would think he would be invested in it, and he was. He actually was defending something that really, really mattered to him, and he was completely in it. But by 1778, the wilderness once again caught him. And I'm not saying that like he got caught in a trap. I'm saying he had yet another run-in with the Shawnee tribe. Now, you would think that they would very much be like, dude, we warned you not to come back here. But actually, this went a little bit differently. He actually ended up being like, hey guys, want to hang out? Or maybe they were like, hey dude, want to hang out? But whatever ended up happening, however that went down, he ended up hanging out with the Shawnee tribe extensively for a great deal of time. He was kind of adopted in, and they liked him. I mean, he ended up, I guess, hitting it off with Chief Blackfish. Good God, I can't speak. He hit it off with the chief of the tribe, whose name was Blackfish. I cannot get that out of my mouth. Why am I getting jumbled? Anyway, him and Chief Blackfish hit it off and they're hanging out, and he's like part of the gang. And during this time, over a span of a couple months, he hunted with them. He learned from them. He watched them very closely. He was like taking hints here and there on how they did life, and everything was going quite well. However, he learned of this planned attack that they were brewing up on Boonesborough. And he's like, oh no, I really like my little town. And let me tell you, if anybody came for Brackenville, I'd feel the same way. I'd be like, I feel like I have a problem with that. Right? Brackenville is a very, very fun place to be. You know, I don't love the idea of attacking Brackenville. Get out of here with you. I would be very upset about that. And that's how he felt about Boonesborough. So he ended up just being like, okay, I gotta go. He ended up escaping. And I say escaping, it's not, he wasn't a prisoner. He just kind of like stowed off. And he was like, I gotta get out of here. And he ended up running off, and he ran, I'm not kidding you, he crossed 160 miles through the wilderness. This is not like paved track, pavement, nice sidewalks. This is like cutting through the woods, 160 miles in just a few days, which is insane. That is an insane feat. I literally have trouble running like 2 miles on a treadmill because I just don't think God put me on this earth for cardio, which is a bummer. I would love to be a long distance runner. It doesn't. It's just, my body hates it, but not Daniel Boone. He was fine with it. He said, I gotta go out of here. And he did, and he ran. And let me just also tell you, he made it back in time. He made it back before the Shawnee tribe pursued or, went on their planned attack. However, that particular siege of Boonesborough that followed ended up becoming one of the very early and very impactful and maybe even, dare I say, romanticized frontier attacks that America really knew. I mean, it was kind of this huge deal. A lot of people heard about it. It became lore. And let me tell you too, the news back then, only back then, because the news would never do this now, ever. I'm telling you, they wouldn't. I'm being serious. But back then, the news was largely inaccurate, which doesn't happen anymore, like at all, ever. But yeah, so people were hearing stuff that was maybe extremely embellished or inaccurate, but people were hearing about it. And it, like I said, it became lore. It became frontier legend, and people loved it, and they were eating it up. So as a result, Daniel Boone is becoming this frontier legend along with the story of him defending Boonesborough. I mean, honestly, it really does sound like a cartoon or something. It sounds like something somebody wrote up, I think is what I'm getting at. Maybe not animated. But really, I mean, like Daniel Boone defending Boonesborough in a great feat of heroic endeavor. And people were really enjoying it. They were enjoying these tales of this man, this wild mountain man that was running through the woods to defend his settlement. And he was becoming not necessarily just a man. He wasn't becoming Daniel Boone. He was becoming Daniel Boone, the story, this big hero of the frontier. And tales were a-spreading, they were growing, and people were getting a really good idea of who he was. Now, he was turned into this American symbol. He was this man to be admired. He was just this warrior wearing that coonskin cap, and people loved him. But I do want to tell you that the real man, the real Daniel Boone, he was a much quieter man. He was very somber. He was very thoughtful. He had a very good head on his shoulders under that coonskin cap. He was methodical. And in many ways, he was actually a lot less successful than the myth and people of the general public would have realized. He was a little bit unlucky in his life because, let me tell you, while people were building their fortunes, their settlements, they were opening general stores and investing in things or whatever, however people made their money back then. They were making their money and making their fortunes. Boone was actually losing his. He was not necessarily the most sharp when it came to civilized social and financial endeavors. And so he was like making really bad land claims. There was a lot of legal confusion that he wasn't necessarily wrapping his brain around. And the chaos of this growing nation that is simultaneously, while all of this is happening, or most of this is happening, is in a war, a fight for independence, piece by piece, Boone's land was actually slipping through his very hardened, calloused hands. And instead of lamenting or being all boo-hoo, hoo about it, he actually was like, let's just move on. And he did what he had always done. He was restless and he was like, I'll just move further into the wilderness, which is exactly what he did. Because in later years, Boone actually crossed the Mississippi into Missouri, and he was starting over again under Spanish rule. Now, this was new land, this was new forest, this was more space, and he did end up being allowed to stay there, even though it wasn't technically owned by the U.S. or open for settlement the way that some other places were. And even into this man's 70s and 80s, he was still out, he was still hunting, he was still, running through the woods, he was exploring, and he was making a habit of just drifting just a little bit beyond where settlement really was established. Like the edge of settlement, he was like, I'm just going to go a couple miles north of there or south or to the east or west. I'm just not going to be a part of modern day, modern day doings, ongoings, life. Like I don't want to be civilized. I like to be outside. And he did that until he was a very old man, and he eventually passed away in the year of 1820. I mean, he's an old guy, but again, no preservatives, and he did seem like he got a lot of cardio through walking, which is arguably the best thing that you could do for your physical health. And so, he was eating like organic meat and walking everywhere. So, my gosh, the Daniel Boone diet lived to be 1,000,000. Like, honestly, clean meat, walk. Somebody tell me if that is not like perfectly healthy. I think that's like the best thing you could possibly do. Anyway, I digress. He was an old man when he did eventually pass away. And that particular wilderness that he loved so much and never wanted to come out of, that was changing so drastically at that time. By the 1820s, there were a lot of roads that were replacing these trails, some of the trails that he helped map out. There were towns that were already replacing these forests. There was a lot of settlement and civilization. Or let me, if you're watching or listening to this, I just want you to know that when I say civilization, I've got the little air quotes, civilization, because civilization at that time was still very rough, and it was going to get rougher with the invention of the Colt, and the Louisiana Purchase opened the door for a lot of like Wild West in the entirety of that statement. When someone says Wild West, the only thing that I can think like that would be comparable, like it's a Wild West, would be like the jungle, like welcome to the jungle, welcome to the Wild West. Like there is nothing more brutal and crazy. It was just it was the wild freaking West. When my little sister was little and she would ask me what a word meant, I remember getting stuck a lot of the time because I'd be like, it's really hard for me to tell you what a word means when you don't know what that word means. And the best word to describe what that means is the word itself, but you don't know what that means. Like I remember looking for like different words that I could help explain to her, but I feel that way when I talk about the Wild West. It was freaking crazy. Like if you really get into the nitty gritty of really about 1803, when we made that big old purchase, up until really like the late 1880s, 90s, and early 1900s, it was chaos, like absolute chaos. But around the year 1820, obviously things were getting kind of kicked into motion, and the frontier, as Daniel Boone knew it, it was just closing. It was changing rapidly and drastically. And I'm sorry I went on the tangent about the Wild West, but it blows my mind. And the harder I think about it, the more like excited I get. Like, I just love that point in history because it was so crazy. We'll get to it. We will get to it. I just like there's so much that happened that I'm like, I don't know how to pin down a thought right now. So I don't know how to present the 1800s to you in a way that I feel does it justice. Let me just tell you, that's been one of my biggest issues lately, has been like, I've been trying to like pin down stories I want to tell you from the 1800s that you may know or you may not, or you might not know all the details of. And let me tell you that I keep on like writing up my notes and being like, this, I can't do it. I can't do it well enough because it was such an absolutely incredible, outrageous point in history. Oh my gosh, the 1800s. Jesus. Anyway, Daniel Boone. Okay, let's talk about this because Daniel Boone, he never actually really belonged to the known world. He never really belonged to any world except for the one that he kind of created for himself, which was a very secluded and exploratory world that he really, really enjoyed. He actually kind of belonged to the space in between worlds. He was almost like this bridge between wilderness and civilization. This is where, you kind of have to start thinking about the psychology of someone like Daniel Boone. And this is where, we still we have most of like the facts of Daniel Boone's life. And now I'm going to tell you kind of what I was thinking when I was learning the facts of Daniel Boone's life, because I always think about what goes through someone's head when they're just like, I'm out of here. Like, do they think anything of what they're doing, or do they just go? And let me just say, the types of people similar to that of Daniel Boone really fascinate me, because you have many different types of people. You have like the consumer type of person. You have the person who kind of just goes where they're told, or goes where they're used to, or what's safe or what's familiar. You have the people who improve upon the known world and known bits of technology, or things that were already established and someone made them better or improved them or fixed them, even a system, a place, a person, a thing, whatever it might be. And then you have the Daniel Boones. And the Daniel Boones are the people who go and do things that no one is doing, that no one's ever done. And at this point in history, that was exploring beyond the known world, because back then, even the known world was extremely hard to live in. It was a difficult place to get on and to hack it and to make things work. And Daniel Boone said, I don't care. I don't really even like it here. I'm going to go where no one's gone. I'm going to forge my own path, quite literally. I'm going to set up what I think civilization is in a previously uncivilized world. So I know that in this particular case, he didn't necessarily invent something new that nobody knew about. He just went to places that nobody thought to go. And there was something in him when he did find Kentucky, the great state of Kentucky, that there was like a resonance in his soul that was like, here, this is where I need to be. And I just like to think about that type of person. I just like to think, does that type of person know what they're doing when they're doing it? Does that type of person plan anything? Do they think other people are going to follow? Do they realize that I'm so bad at math? A couple hundred years later, some random girl is going to be sitting on her couch talking into a camera about this. Like, do they understand that bit of inspiration that they felt and acted upon has lingered through all of American history for hundreds of years, to the point that we're still kind of interested in it? And do they realize the impact that they have on not just the people around them, but the people that come after them? And I don't have an answer for any of that. That was just what I was thinking as I was reading it, was like the the person that goes and does what no one else is doing is always the most fascinating to me, because once again, you have the people that follow the other people. You typically have the people who improve upon what's already been done or is being done. And then you have the person, much like Daniel Boone, who goes and does his own thing and says, screw it, let's do it. And, it's really badass. Like, it's really cool to me. And we have a lot of modern day Daniel Boones that really blow my mind. We have a lot of Daniel Boones that came after the real Daniel Boone, and many that came before, like a lot that came before. And it's just a very fascinating mindset to me. And I'm very interested and would be curious with Daniel Boone types that are still alive. Is this something, do you know what you're doing when you do it? Do you know that you are forging your own path quite literally and setting up your own Boonesborough in the middle of nowhere and then giving it everything you've got to defend it? And this is going to be something that lasts through God only knows what point in history. Daniel Boone himself may or may not be forgotten. But that day is not today, because we just chatted about him ad nauseum extensively. So anyway, that is my biography of the week, I suppose. I'm just really interested. I'm really interested in that. And I'm really hoping that maybe at some point we can get like some actual living humans in here to tell us their stories. I know a few that I would love to ask that I know you're going to love, but that's going to be a while off. I have to figure out how to edit better and manage my time better and things of that nature. But for now, I just want to kind of ponder these types of people. I want to ponder all types of people from all points in history. I love current humans, and I just really appreciate you sticking here with me. And this is going to be kind of the flow that we're going to move into a little bit. I think I have a lot of things that I just want to get out there. And sometimes when I'm doing like the cocktails and Cliff Notes stuff, it just takes a lot of energy and effort. And I will keep doing those, but I don't want that to be my main bread and butter. Sometimes I just want to be able to like dump stuff out, because I read a lot of stuff, like a lot. And I feel like I'm consuming a lot more than I can get out with my current way of doing things. So let me know if you hate this format, like people who've watched my stuff for a while. Like, please just let me know if you think this is cool or okay, or if you enjoyed this, or if you prefer the cocktails and Cliff Notes type stuff. Just let me know. I really want to know. And I will keep on dumping history in your lap. I love history. And also tell me this too, with like some of my very faithful people who follow. Shout out, you guys. Thank you so much. But tell me if you would like to talk about other things. We don't have to always just talk about history. We can talk about all kinds of things. I read so many things and so many books, and there's so many things that interest me. So if you want, we can kind of move into other things too. Not just history. It doesn't have to just be U.S. history all the time, though I love U.S. history and we could talk about it forever. Especially if I can figure out how to package the 1800s in a way that I feel does it justice, which I have yet to do. We can talk about history for forever. I mean, there's a never-ending supply of things we can learn from people who preceded us. However, there's also a lot of good information on mental health. There's a lot of good information on physical health and well-being and all sorts of things that we could definitely chat about. So let me know if you want to do that. If not, I'm happy to stick with history, and I will read those things on my own time. And in the meantime, thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time. All right, Daniel Boone. Cheers.